Welcome back to the Cosmic Library, where you can read the greatest stories in all of the multiverse. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
We are doing this show in conjunction with Second Union. For more of the latest headlines and entertainment, please go to our website at wearesecondunion.com. Another week has come, another week has gone, and everything... wow. For every problem that seems to solve itself, another one pops up. But, how are you two doing?
About the same. Such is life. You put out one fire, there's 4 more.
Don't say fire. I live in California. That's PTSD for me. Oof.
Southern California, even.
Yeah.
I was, for some reason, thinking of Australia, but yeah.
They have a once-a-century problem right now. Someone tells me after this year it's not going to be as bad. Out here, we're moving back into drought territory.
Ew.
Yeah, it's not been a good winter. Jesse, how about you? How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Just doing the same old, same old.
I've been trying to keep track of comic books because Marvel is really seem to be pushing the X-Men to the forefront of their line, even though the X-Men are not at the forefront of their big, universal stories. It's an interesting dichotomy. It really seems like the X-Men are strangely apart from everything else going on right now. And that can't last forever.
No, we've been kind of predicting it since we read Dawn of X.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a little bit of a hint of that. The first issue of the X-Men Fantastic Four miniseries has dropped. So we've seen where the X-Men are butting heads with other heroes, where their worlds intersect. But, I mean, even though Krakoa is a small island on the planet, it is now a small island of immense power. It seems inevitable that somebody is going to pop up on their shores, and things will not be positive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, goodness knows the Avengers have global reach. I'm kind of surprised they haven't popped in just to say, what's going on here?
Why are you all amassing this big group of mutants?
Or at least say hi.
That too. Yeah. I'm still curious why Wakanda is against this particular thing. We've discussed before, Wakandans and mutants have generally been very cool with each other.
And if anyone knows isolationism, it's them.
Yeah, but they really don't seem to like this in particular. I don't know if it's because of the economic implications or the sociological ones, or if you gather enough mutants in one place and nobody likes them. I don't know.
Oh, maybe they just don't like certain mutants that happen to be part of their party now.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah, I almost said something very glib, but it even for me, it's a bit much, so I'm going to keep that one in the back pocket.
Oh, let's be honest. They have nearly every mutant that's existed on that island, the good and the bad.
Well, that's why I thought it'd be more likely that some of Marvel's heroes might have popped by sooner. I mean, yeah, there's always a chance that characters like Apocalypse or Sebastian Shaw or Mystique even are very genuine in their idea of becoming better for the sake of their people and thereby the world. Except, when you name those names, you still have to keep one eye on them because, goodness knows, if they have one slip, half the people in the world could suddenly end up on the wrong side of death's door.
True. And that's a fair concern. That was kind of my concern when reading through the cast of who all was there. It just doesn't seem logical that the utopia is going to last. And I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's
the part that really bothers me about Krakoa. Not the idea that some of the characters on it are going to betray the others. We've already seen it starting here.
Mm-hmm.
What bothers me, though, is the idea that Xavier and Magneto, two guys who have both been on both the right and wrong side of, moral laws, would just allow all these new characters into their realm without some kind of safeguard against them doing exactly what we're discussing here.
But we don't know if there's not a safeguard.
Well, that's the thing. They're over-planners. I would count on there being some sort of safeguard. The question is, what is it and how is it applied? And I don't mean the weird stasis jail that Sabretooth is in. I mean, you need something more radical if you're going to contain some of the people on this island.
Right, and Xavier always went kind of extreme with his emergency measures, if we can all remember some of those.
Well, not even his emergency measures. His beginning measures are morally dubious at best, like the way he manipulated Cyclops and Rogue pretty much as soon as they came to the school to become X-Men.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering if there's something involved with their resurrection system.
That maybe that they revert back to a previous incarnation of their
I
self.
I think Jesse's
Or-
implying that the failsafe may be built into the resurrection system.
Yeah.
Or that maybe kind of like take a page from Suicide Squad. There's something built into their organic forms that might, like internal taser or
Well, potentially. I mean,
something.
he's right. Part of the resurrection process involves a mutant who can bend reality in any way he pleases.
And
Yeah.
he's not always been the most stable of people.
No, far from it.
I'm shocked by this. What? Are you serious?
And he's not even the only reality-bending mutant on that island. Well, he may be now. I mean, the other one suddenly took the throne of Otherworld, so yeah. Oh my goodness, it's it's like a comic book Young and the Restless right now.
Oh, the drama.
Yeah. But that is for another day, because the X-Men are not the primary subject of this week. This week we are checking out the first 5 issues of Titan Comics Robotech series from 2017. We will get to that after the news of the week. And we like to start off with Marvel comic news. We talk about the various characters and properties of Marvel and where the storytelling directions can take them. And the first story here actually has to do with Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel number 18 is going to be an Empire tie-in, the event where Hulkling leads the combined armies of the Skrull and the Kree into Earth space for an as of yet unknown reason. It's going to be written by Kelly Thompson with art by Corey Smith and a cover by Jorge Molina. Now, the idea that Captain Marvel is involved in Empire is not surprising. She is part Kree, after all. It would seem very logical for her to be involved in this in some particular way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm a long-term Marvel fan, and I could not have predicted this particular way.
Really?
Yeah. According to the solicit, quote, in the throes of war, Carol finds herself with a bold new role and a brand new weapon. The universal weapon, in fact. When a Kree soldier bombs a unified city of the Empire, Emperor Hulkling sends his new accuser to bring down the swift and necessary hammer of justice. But what at first seems like a relatively simple directive will end up challenging Carol on a personal level she had never imagined. Unquote. Did y'all pick apart what was in that solicit?
I did, but it's also mixing with something I've seen somewhere else earlier this week. Is she an accuser?
Yes. She is part of the
Really?
adjudicate branch of the Kree Empire, according to the solicit and the cover to this tie-in, which has Carol Danvers in a green and black and silver version of her costume, holding an accuser's mallet high above her head.
Ooh.
And I mean, Carol Danvers is already just about the most powerful terrestrial character in Marvel Comics today, given her multiple power upgrades and the wealth of power available to her.
Mm-hmm.
And you're adding a cosmic level accuser's warhammer into that.
This could be very fun or very scary.
Could be a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's certainly people I've met in my life that are very entertaining, yet I'd never take them home to meet my mother. So the implications of this are far-reaching. I mean, is this permanent? Probably not by any stretch of the imagination, but even for the short amount of time this is capable, this is going to be an interesting story, let alone, I'm trying to imagine what the fallout of this could be, because if the Kree Empire is intact after the Empire event, I mean, I don't know what it means to the relations between Carol and the Kree that she, A, becomes an accuser, and then B, probably eventually is no longer an accuser. I don't think there's a retirement plan for that classification.
No, I don't
I
believe
thought they
there
kind
is.
of were until they died. Does that count as a retirement
I
plan?
really don't know. The few accusers I've seen, and I'm sure there's more than I've read because I've never been the biggest Avengers person, but I've only ever seen 2. One named Hala, who was around after the fall of the Kree Empire, and of course Ronan the Accuser, who himself for a little while in the comics was leading the Kree Empire up until his death. And I know, it's comic books. Is death permanent? Not likely.
Nope.
But at the same time, I've just never seen a former accuser before.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't know if there is a way for a Kree to stop being an accuser. It doesn't sound like a complicated question, but if you're writing a story well, that should be a very complicated a civil question, a societal question.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually look forward not just to seeing Carol Danvers be an accuser, I look forward to see what happens when she's no longer one. I don't know how that's going to shake out.
Yeah, definitely.
Meanwhile, another Marvel character is getting an addition to their family. And, yeah, this one, although did not have a child, because his name is Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ultimate Spider-Man, he's getting a baby sister.
Oh.
Aww.
As of May's issue number 18, she'll be revealed to be Billy Mariana Morales. I'm imagining Billy is short for Wilhelmina. But the variant covered in number 18 shows that Miles apparently is going to be very, very active in his little sister's life. It shows him actively swinging, as a matter of fact, throwing a couple webs towards the viewer, or the reader.
Mm-hmm.
And he's used his webs to create a modified baby carrier, and he has Billy just kind of strapped to his chest there.
Aww, that's cute.
And she's holding a sippy cup.
That's
You know what?
adorable.
This is a different direction to take a Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It really is, because you're very aware. Peter Parker wasn't aware he had a sister until they were both adults. You know, this is a very young man who is getting a baby sister. But there's a small part of me that stares at this and goes, so, Disney has two heroes that's taking care of young children while they're gallivanting around the world, eh?
Yep.
You know, this one may not be force-powered, but, yeah.
I love the goggle touch.
Yeah, somebody was planning ahead. So, it's not a big impact to the story overall, except, you know, the lives of spider people have always been kind of fraught, and their families tend to get caught in the middle. So this could be a big game changer as to how Miles handles the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be far more alert.
I am strangely curious to read this, though, because, like we said, babies are kind of rare in the spider world.
But you know, him being a babysitter, or at least trying to take care of his little sister, Spidey sense will have a lot come in very handy.
Maybe, except it just occurred to me, though, that in May we'll be 2 months deep into the outlawed era of Marvel Comics, where any hero under the age of 21 is technically illegal.
Ooh.
Oh.
So this could actually be a
That could be
huge
interesting.
complication.
Huh.
It's weird how things change when you suddenly remember the full view of Marvel storytelling.
Oh yeah, they have one of those.
Yeah. However, there is a new team that may not have an issue with the new American laws, probably because none of them are American. I don't know if you're aware of this, but for a while in the 80s and early 90s, Marvel had a very big focus on the United Kingdom. They had several comic books being produced by UK talent, featuring UK characters, primarily operating out of the British Isles. It appears that C.B. Cebulski has led Marvel to pick that back up, because there is a new super team coming out of British characters called The Union. It's going to be done by Paul Grist and Andrea DeVito. The original cover is going to be by R.B. Silva, one of the artists of the Dawn of X lines. And I've been staring at this picture for a while, and I can tell you that, one, this appears to be spinning out of the Empire event. The title of it is in the lower right corner of the solicitation. And number two, I only recognize one character in this entire lineup. Either they are all new, or they're digging so deep into the well I can't see it.
Interesting.
Yeah, the only character that pops out as obvious to me is Union Jack. Marvel has had a character that dresses up in a head-to-toe bodysuit. Usually, combination Special Forces spy. The name has been used by a number of characters. However, think of him as Britain's version of... Marvel UK's version of 007 in superhero colors. He carries a pistol, he carries a knife, he's fought vampires, version of him fought in World War II. He's just that habitual hero that pops up every now and again. The other four on here, I really can't tell you who they are. They all look very different from anything I'm familiar with. It almost looks like somebody just did like a modern D20 D&D game and just wrote everything down, really.
Seems cool. I Looks like the woman with almost like a Scarlet Witch headpiece and a shield with a lion on it.
Yeah, I'm staring at that, and I'm wondering if that has to do with another Marvel hero. Have you ever heard of Captain Midlands?
Yeah, vaguely.
Okay, so Captain Midlands, and I don't know when the character was created, was thought of as Britain's answer to Captain America. Captain America was made in science, and his shield was basically the top of kinetic and basically scientific R&D made out of America, right? So Captain Midlands, when he started, he was a World War II hero, except because of his basis in Britain, his purview wasn't really science. Neither was his origin. It was magic. He was given a shield that had a lion on it, and it was able to deflect magic as easily as Captain America's shield deflected impact.
Cool.
And while the color and the design of the shield are different, the lion head immediately makes me think of Captain Midlands. So I don't know if this is some variation on that character. The other three, who appears to be an elven or fey woman with pink hair, the S&M samurai on the far right, and the one down in the front, which looks like a slender woman who's a modern rogue. I have no idea who they are.
Interesting. I'd read it.
I am curious to flip through this and find out more. Marvel's UK lines tend to have a lot of imagination to them. The last time they had a serious super team was Captain Britain and MI-13, which involved the prior Captain Britain, Brian Braddock, and a number of cobbled-together heroes from across Marvel Comics, including the newest version of the newest holder of Excalibur, a Muslim doctor named Faiza, I believe.
Really?
Yeah. Blade was a member. It turns out he has dual U.S. and English citizenship.
Is that why he can avoid taxes?
No, but that's why he occasionally has this sudden urge for tea and crumpets at about 4 o'clock.
Interesting.
I got the joke.
Yeah, I made that up. But
Good.
it also involved Pete Wisdom and a couple other rather notable Marvel UK characters. So, I actually do want to read this. I want to see who these characters are. Joanna, please don't kill me.
Oh boy. Anytime you preface a sentence with that, I automatically think that there's something that's going to upset me.
This very likely will, although it shouldn't, because it's technically not what you remember. However, I've learned not to underestimate your furor. Okay, so Marvel has released these solicitations for May, which includes the cover to Star Wars number 6. The latest volume of Star Wars comics has to do with the gap in storytelling between The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi. We've already seen in the first couple issues how Luke Skywalker is recovering, getting his first bionic replacement for his hand, as well as some mysterious figure that caught the lightsaber that was dropped in Bespin City, right? Well,
Right.
we know by Return of the Jedi he has another lightsaber, a green one. What we're finding out from the Star Wars comics was that was not his first replacement for the lost lightsaber. The cover to number 6 shows Luke Skywalker back in his X-Wing uniform, and he's carrying a lightsaber. However, it is not one that, as far as I know, he's ever held before. Even the hilt of it looks very different compared to anything else I've ever really seen. And the reason why I say don't kill me is because it has a yellow crystal.
Son of a mother.
I sent you the image. It's also by R.B. Silva. It's a very striking image, and as I was staring at it, I'm just like, there is something really weird going on here. But the more I think
about
about
the fact he's got lightning behind him that might be force lightning.
yeah, but the more I think about it, the more I just kind of gamed it out in my head as logical. I mean, you can't just learn to build these things overnight. You're probably going to have a couple versions of it before he settles on anything. Especially since he's technically still untrained at this point.
Someone had to show him how to make it.
Well, that's the question, though. Where did he learn this? Or did he just happen to find another lightsaber that someone else accidentally left behind? I don't know.
Yes and no. Okay, so part of the Jedi training is to build their own lightsaber. Now, there
Yeah.
are different kinds of kyber crystals. They all have different colors and different facets and things like that. And so the kyber crystal basically chooses the Jedi. They're called to each other. So it's part of the Jedi training / path. So my interest here is that in the expanded universe, Leia's lightsaber is yellow.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, though, is that in the expanded universe, Leia was the only one that had a yellow lightsaber, but that was before Disney started to settle down as to what an actual full continuity is for this group of stories. And that did mean they had to eject a lot of what came prior because there's some weird overlap, and then you get to zombie troopers, and things get really weird really quick.
And you don't have to pay royalties to anyone else.
Correct.
And Mara Jade was purple, so...
Yeah, so... And then we have the current continuity where the first time we saw a yellow lightsaber in Disney's version of things is Rey in Rise of the Skywalker. However, now we found out there appears to be a prior version of that somewhere. I mean, that actually leads to the question, could it be that Rey cobbled together her lightsaber based on parts left behind from this thing he's carrying in this comic book?
That would be really cool. I always thought, and I kind of choose to think, that the yellow lightsaber that Rey has was Leia's. They never say it.
I don't know. I mean, the only time they referred to Leia's saber in that film was the blue one she picked up.
It's like a greenish blue.
It looked blue to me.
Well, bah humbug.
Okay. So, again, this is something that comes to us without a whole lot of direct answers, but it has some rather far-reaching implications, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And... You know, I'm not really sold on any particular Star Wars lore. I looked at this originally and just thought, wow, that seems like a bit of a cop-out. But yeah, a little bit of thought as to what I knew about Star Wars history versus what we actually do know from the history they're building, this leads to a lot of interesting questions in my mind.
Yeah, I'd like to find out all about this lightsaber. Or I'll kind of be annoyed if it's just a color choice by the artist and it has nothing to do with anything in the story. Because we've seen comic covers like that. Like, the cover's really cool, like, ooh, what is that? And it has zero to do with the actual story.
Fortunately, that tends to be more of a DC problem than a Marvel problem. It seems like the editorial in Marvel is more direct about making sure the cover has some relation to what's going on inside.
Yeah.
So I do think that this is what they intended to do. I would like to think that if editorial had a particular idea as to a color of a lightsaber he's going to be carrying at this point, they wouldn't just look at the color and go, well, that looks flashy.
But you never know. You're right, it is more of a DC thing, but who's to say?
Yeah. Well, there is a little bit of news about the giant-sized Magneto. The Marvel is reviving the giant-sized comics for the X-Men line. It's supposed to be a group of one-shots telling particular stories about particular characters. And remember, we found out last week that the Nightcrawler giant size was moved up 3 weeks into March, while the Magneto one was moved back 3 weeks into April. Mm-hmm. And there may actually be an answer as to why this is occurring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the giant-sized Magneto one-shot has switched artists. The originally solicited artist was Ben Oliver. According to CBR.com, he is no longer available. His schedule filled up. And at the same time, the artist on the giant-sized Nightcrawler, Alan Davis, was pretty far ahead of schedule, so they simply flipped it. The new artist for the giant-sized Magneto will be Ramon Perez. The original date of Magneto was supposed to be March 20... I believe it's March 25th. It's now coming out April 29th, whereas Nightcrawler is now coming out on March 25th, where it used to be on April 14th. So, according to the Marvel solicitations, giant-sized X-Men Magneto will show Magneto having to bargain with his former sworn enemy, humanity itself.
That's a fascinating idea.
Yeah, it really is. Can he come to grips with a thing he's been trying to ignore for most of his adult life?
Well, no, he is doing something we've known him never to do, is compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he has. Just generally not with humanity. He will compromise with mutants everywhere, as long as it means avoiding a possibly lethal fight. But negotiating with humanity, that's just something he's never really done. As a matter of fact, there's supposed to be 5 of these giant-sized one-shots. Jean Grey and Emma Frost, Magneto, Nightcrawler, Phantom X, and Storm. The Phantom X one is the biggest curiosity to me. I mean, that's the one that technically shouldn't exist right now. But who knows? If the X-Men are able to clone bodies so easily, he could be back already. Meanwhile, there's two characters that are going to meet very soon in the X-Men universe, and I expect something very bad to happen.
Oh.
Yeah, as you know, Cable is getting a new series, except this is not the Cable most people know from movies and cartoons. This is the teenage one, or the young adult one that's come back in time to assist his family and mutants in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though he is the one who shot his older self, man, that is... I can't... He's a looper, I guess, but okay. The thing is, Kid Cable is about to meet somebody, and I can't imagine this going at all well. As of Cable number 3, young Nathan Summers is going to meet Wade Wilson.
Oh,
Really?
no.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to imagine
No.
how Deadpool is going to respond to a teenage Cable, and how teenage Cable is going to respond to somebody he's never met before.
I am more worried about what influence he's going to have on that poor young boy.
I'm more worried that he's going to misunderstand that this poor young boy is not the man he's gotten to know.
Yeah.
That's also a possibility.
You know, we are talking about a kid who shot his older self just to get him out of his way.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not going to say Deadpool's in over his head, but I don't think he's prepared for this.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
According to writer Jerry Dugan, quote, "Show up if you want to be thrilled by an important new era in Cable's history, or you get lost looking at Phil's work. It's his finest hour," unquote. He's referring to the artist Phil Noto. He also went on to say, quote, "Cable and Deadpool have teamed up in the past, both on page and on screen, but when Wade Wilson meets this new version of Nate Summers in Cable number 3, he'll quickly realize that this is not the grizzled old veteran that he knew and loved. However, that does not mean the two won't end up as friends. Marvel is teasing that their meetup will prove that this is one friendship that is destined to be," unquote. If this is the whole... If this whole thing is Deadpool trying to take him to strip clubs, man, I'm checking out. No way.
I am, like I said, I'm more worried about him just instilling some not so great habits and... Yeah.
I don't think that's really possible. I mean, Cable lives on Krakoa with his father.
Yeah, and how does his father likely care about Deadpool?
It's not about what his father thinks of Deadpool, it's about what Cable thinks of his father. We are talking about somebody that broke the laws of time to bring his father back to life.
I know, I think the X-Men have done worse.
Last up, we have the first images of X-Factor in costume. This is another group of mutants, except the purview of this group is to find the mutants that have not reported to Krakoa. And I don't mean missing X-Men. I mean, they're looking for the mutants who have either been resurrected and or just plain not come to Krakoa. And it's a pretty solid team overall. The 6 we knew about were Prestige, Rachel Summers, Daken, Wolverine's son, team leader Northstar from Alpha Flight, Polaris, Magneto's daughter, Prodigy, I don't know if he's been restored to his powered form or not, and Eyeboy, the kid who can see almost literally everything. Except they've announced a 7th member in this little solicit here. Northstar's sister is coming.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah, Aurora is going to be a member of X-Factor. I wonder which version of Aurora we're talking about, because in the history of Marvel Comics, Aurora has had a rather vicious multiple personality disorder.
Oh.
Well, yeah,
you're right.
she there's the boisterous Aurora persona, and then there's her Jean Marie persona, which is almost Catholic nun-like, really, in the way she sees the world. But because of events in Weapon X, there was a third persona that came out. And I never learned its name, but it was basically something that was okay with homicide.
Oh.
Yeah, I think her mind was healed in subsequent stories, but I don't recall the means. So I just don't know which version of this character we're getting. Even if she had multiple personality disorders, there's more than enough telepaths and therapists on Krakoa to deal with it, I'm certain. I just don't know how she's landing on the island. Let me put it that way.
Landing.
Well, she does fly.
Yeah.
I sent you
Just
guys...
thinking like a meteor.
Yeah. I sent you guys an image of X-Factor in their new costumes, and I gotta admit, I like the designs. They're rather distinct.
Ooh.
They don't look like superheroes. They look like journeymen.
Mm-hmm.
They look like people on a mission that they know will take them around the world for extended periods.
I really like Aurora's capelet. Ooh.
Yeah, actually, her and North Star's outfits, this is the first time they've been really, I guess you could say, cooperative or collaborative without actually being duplicates of each other.
Mm.
They actually look like they're on the same mission. I really like Polaris' new design. It's not as loud as some of her prior outfits.
Yeah. That's
And
cool.
with the color code, I was briefly reminded of Green Lanterns for a second.
I mean,
you got 3 of the colors there. 4 if you count.
yeah, Dawkins is probably the most curious member of this team to me because, yeah, he's been a long-term X-villain and he's a known manipulator. He's another one of those characters that I don't know how he's going to respond now that he has a home. He's always just kind of bopped around to the next thing that's entertained him until now.
I thought most of his issues stemmed from his father. And
Well, they do, but he's alive again. I mean, Dawkins was like a lot of Wolverine's enemies. They tended to be a lot nicer when he was dead. But he's back.
The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
You know, the only one that's kind of the odd man out here is Eyeboy, who somehow still looks like a kid in comparison to everybody else on this roster.
Is that the one on the far right?
Yeah, with the hoodie.
Mm-hmm.
However, his abilities I'm sure, are going to be central to them tracking down who's missing.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So, yeah, I like the team's mission, I like the team's design, and I even like the artist, David Baldion. He's the guy who was doing the Domino volumes up until recently.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So, I actually do want to read this. I think this is going to be a pretty good series.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my eye out for it.
Is that an Eyeboy joke?
No,
Okay.
Yes.
it wasn't. It completely wasn't. You'll know when I intend to make jokes.
Next up, we have DC Comic News. We talk about the other major company in comics and what they have coming now and in the near future. And we finally have an answer as to what these teases have been about. We have seen Wonder Woman in strangely accentuated armor with a chainsaw. We've seen a Batman with a skeletal cycle and a scythe. And we've seen a Superman who appears to be slowly becoming petrified with hair that would make Glenn Danzig jealous. Add this up and what do you get? According to the official announcement, this will be the final event done by the creative team of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, known as Dark Knight's Death Metal.
Huh.
According to a statement by Snyder, quote, "I've been waiting to do this story since we finished Dark Knight's Metal. As much as it was a complete event, we left some threads hanging there for sure. I'd hope that if people liked the first series enough, we'd have a chance to set up something bigger. And that's our plan for Death Metal." Unquote. According to the artist Greg Capullo, quote, "For all of us, Dark Knight's Death Metal is about the fun factor. Comics should be fun, bombastic, and over the top. This series is going to be exciting and jam-packed with great metal-esque moments that'll make fans lose their minds when they see them." Unquote. So, Death Metal is coming out of the events of Snyder and Capullo's recently concluded Justice League run, as well as Year of the Villain, Hell Arisen, and it's going to see DC consumed by dark multiversal energy, courtesy of the Batman Who Laughs and his infected, heroes he's infected with his own version of Joker Venom. But Wonder Woman will get her hands on a key piece of information, and she will attempt to recruit Earth's remaining heroes to take a stand against the Batman Who Laughs, the infected, and Perpetua herself. So,
Ooh.
any opinions?
Despite myself, my curiosity's piqued.
This makes me just kind of want to beat my head against the wall until something red spurts out of my forehead.
Oh,
I don't recommend that.
I agree. Comics have got to be fun, but if it's just kind of mindless fighting and just mindless, it's really not interesting. It's flashy.
There's also an opportunity that occurs to me as lost here. I mean, Wonder Woman taking charge in a big event has almost never happened in DC before. But at the same time, Batman and Superman are still in this book. They could have had.
So it's not her actually getting to have a platform. It's her doing the thing while the men are doing their thing too.
Well, not necessarily that, but I mean, DC, despite the issues I have with it, has a wide array of heroes. Why did it have to be the Trinity again as the feature of this book? Why couldn't it be Wonder Woman leading a group of forces from different parts of the DC universe without the need of, the usual storytelling of Batman and Superman being involved?
Because they're afraid to step out of their formula, and they need to get over it.
So it's just one of those things that really just slapped me in the face as I'm staring at it. If Wonder Woman is in the lead, then you really have an opportunity to elevate other parts of DC's pantheon.
But they're not going to.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it still has yet to come out. I may flip through this, but I am going to be extremely guarded because as much as Snyder and Capullo say they're having fun with these, I most decidedly was not. And the fact that, 2 years after Metal, we're already going back to this dark multiversal stuff really feels like we're spinning our wheels in the same stories. And that concerns me rather greatly.
It's DC, and it's their Trinity. What do you expect?
I expect more variety in the villains and the Batman Who Laughs just annoying people for the last 18 months straight.
Well, don't hold your breath.
I tried that once, and there's a reason why there's only 4 working brain cells in here. Thank you very much. But either way, I mean, the teaser image that was released with this, probably one of the covers to this event, involves a group of images we've already seen superimposed with each other. I'm still staring at this thing called the Chainsaw of Truth, and just it makes me grind my teeth a little bit.
I mean, if I knew nothing about comics or who these people were supposed to be, I would say it's a pretty interesting looking cover. I mean, I do like Wonder Woman's armor and the whole cape and everything and the little headpiece, the wings of light behind her.
I have a feeling that's not literal, though. I think that's more of an effect.
Yeah. But it's cool. It's a cool image. I don't know. Kind of.
I'm looking at it. Yeah, it's kind of cool to me for the night. This looks awesome, but it looks the 90s as hell, and you know how 90s
in that.
The 90s in comic books, unless you were really a fan of particular characters, it was hard for a lot of readers. And I say that as a fan of 90s comic books. There were a lot of interesting things that came out of it, but it also created a lot of tropes that have defined comic books ever since.
Are you talking about the impossible poses for the female heroes?
Oh, we're talking about the entire thing. We're talking about women who had serious bouts of scoliosis, as well as seeing their plastic surgeon evidently on a weekly basis. We're talking about guys who had knees the size of cue balls, as well as enough pouches to make a Boy Scout coat. Dude, that's a bit much. Yeah. It was everything about the era, and Jesse's right. Just this image evokes so much 90s storytelling with the petrified arm of
90s extreme.
Yeah, the petrified arm, the scythe dripping with blood, and a leather coat that has spikes on it. A chainsaw, a mystic chainsaw of all things. It's a bit much.
And again, it's DC. They're not going to ever get out of their little box.
Well, I've been arguing for a while that Scott Snyder should be a creative director instead of a writer, because his ideas are very big, they're very bold, and they could actually change quite a bit. However, once he starts an event, he seems to get... I think he's having too much fun in whatever he's working on, because he seems to get lost in the weeds rather quickly. One or two issues in, and the focus just seems to vanish in favor of all this wild stuff that goes on. So... Yep. That's how I feel, anyway.
That's a fair point.
DC has also announced something new, the first of 5 Prestige format one-shots that are going to go into detail on a specific age in DC's legacy. The first one-shot is called Generation 1, Age of Mysteries. According to DC's co-publisher Dan Didio, quote, "The Generation series of specials are built to bring the new DC timeline to life. With Generation 1, Age of Mysteries, and every subsequent volume will be shining a spotlight on the 80-plus year publishing history of the DC Universe, while charting the course for the bright future of DC's characters. All of our greatest stories and events will create the backdrop and context for the great new adventures we have planned. Everything counts, and we guarantee there will be surprises along the way, unquote. I see where he's going with this, and DC does need this. They need a definitive timeline. I'm not quite sure that 5 one-shots will be enough to detail what we need to know to understand that timeline.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it depends on the size of it. It doesn't say what the size of these individual volumes are. Didio actually teased a new timeline for DC back this past July at San Diego Comic-Con. At the time, he said, quote, "One of the things we're working on in the DCU is we're building an ultimate timeline. We're building this so we have a better idea of where our stories connect. This is where we made our mistake during the New 52. We didn't understand which stories mattered, which ones didn't. Once we understand how those characters connect, then we'll be in a place to give you the true history of the DCU," unquote. And
so they rebooting it just for the sake of cohesion now?
Not rebooting it, they're finally creating it. We've discussed multiple times that DC's biggest problem is the multi-universal retcons that their universe has undergone. It is so muddled, we don't know which characters came first, which characters still exist, which characters' history is still intact. I mean, Wonder Woman has like 3 of them.
More.
I'm guessing. I haven't read enough to understand everything going on as it is.
I have a big book of all things Wonder Woman, and all of her versions of her story are in there. Anyway. Well, even before... So how are they going to reorganize everything without doing a full retcon?
Therein lies the question. It sounds like what they're doing is instead of retconning it, they're actually plotting out the histories of various characters and finding where they intersect and creating a timeline out of it. The only big change to this, though, is that they're being very definitive that the history of Wonder Woman predates all heroes of DC. Diana is the first hero of their timeline. So it is no longer Superman by creation back in the 1920s, I believe it was. No, I'm sorry, it'd be the 1940s. It is Wonder Woman, whose history is basically mythologically based. She was there during the age of the ancient Greeks.
Mm-hmm.
So she will be the first hero that defines their universe. And this can be a great storytelling tool. Maybe this will be finally what brings everything in line and helps us understand what happened. I mean, for goodness sakes, Didio is being very... Presumptuous is not the word I'm looking for. He's being very proactive in saying that even something as badly received by fans as the New 52 is not being ejected. That also has its place in their timeline. That's bold. And I think at this point, bold is what they need to help make sense of all this.
I still want to see where they're going with it.
Well, it sounds like the Generation 1 shot is going to be the answers. And I'll probably look through the first couple just to see if it helps me understand it. I mean, goodness knows, understanding their timeline might actually help make me a reader.
I just feel like it's such a big project to sort and organize that A, how are they going to do it? B, how is it going to be cohesive and approachable and accessible to readers, even longtime readers?
That's the question, and I'm curious to know the answers. I mean, given that it's being released in May, just like 3 months away, that means they've already been working on this for at least 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and since he's been talking about it since July, it's more likely they've been working on it for 9 at this point. They're taking their time with it, at least.
There's a lot of history to go through.
Absolutely. Not denying that.
Wow, I just wouldn't want to be the guy who goes for coffee for this group.
Well, one person I would like to go to get coffee for would be Brian Michael Bendis. He's been one of my favorite creators in modern storytelling. This is the man responsible for the Avengers Disassembled, the New Avengers, Miles Morales, and several big benchmarks in Marvel history. But he's been working for DC for a while. More specifically, he's been working on both Naomi, Wonder Comics, and Action Comics. And he's actually responsible for the recent storyline where Clark Kent revealed to the world that Clark Kent is the secret identity of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
But that happened in December, and I don't think we've fully seen the fallout of that reveal yet. As a matter of fact, Brian Michael Bendis was talking to CBR recently about how one character in particular is going to respond to this particular reveal.
Luthor?
Yeah. He said, quote, "And then the villains, some of which, no matter what they thought about Superman's strength, a lot of them thought of themselves as smarter or more clever than him. And this threw all of that off. Now they don't know what to do. The rulebook has been thrown out, and around the same time that Lex Luthor threw out his rulebook too. That was separate. That was from Scott Snyder. But Luthor is working on a different plane, and now Superman's working on a different plane." Superman actually says the line in the villain special, which you haven't seen yet, but he says, "You know, I guess really for the first time, neither Lex or I knew what the other was going to do. And that's pretty frustrating." And then he says, "And refreshing. Like it's both things. So everyone from Lex Luthor to Toyman to Bizarro gets to reflect and react." Unquote.
I bet you someone's going to feel real dumb if they didn't figure it out.
Yeah, to me that is an interesting story right there. We've talked about how the fallout of Superman revealing his identity can affect Lois Lane, but we never really thought about how that affects all these characters who for all this time are usually criminals who say, "I am the smartest man in the world." Really? You didn't see that, did you?
Have you seen the comic where Bruce Wayne is sitting there and he draws, the mustache and the glasses on the picture of Superman? He's like, "Wait a second."
No.
And have you never seen that?
No.
No.
Oh my goodness. I've come across it so many times.
That sounds meme-worthy.
I think it is more a meme. I'm not sure if it's like actually in a comic, but it's Bruce Wayne's realization of, "Oh, wait a second."
Yeah,
because he's just being a jerk and drawing,
Yeah, the closest I've seen to that is the meme of Lois Lane working at the Daily Planet. She's putting up a photo of her being saved by Superman flying through the sky, and as she's getting ready to hit post, all of a sudden the Daily Planet social media pops up with a photo and says, "Lois Lane, would you like to tag your friend Clark Kent?"
I've seen that one.
I've seen that one too, yeah.
So this is actually an interesting story to me. I mean, the idea is to all of these characters who for so long have thought of themselves as the smartest person in the room have been proven that they are not. And how do they respond to that?
Probably not well.
I would imagine not. This is a big curiosity to me. Meanwhile, there will be a new comic book series that DC is coming out that is based on probably one of the most popular properties that DC has ever had. It will be a new series, or new 6-issue miniseries, titled Batman: The Adventures Continue. It's coming out this April. It's being written by Paul Dini. Sorry?
I said I knew it was Batman.
Well, it's being written by Paul Dini and Alan Burnett, illustrations by Ty Templeton. The reason why it's called Batman: The Adventures Continue is that it is a 6-issue miniseries continuing the story of Batman the Animated Series.
Oh.
This is the series that birthed brand new characters to DC canon, including Harley Quinn and Renee Montoya. Mm-hmm. And now the 6-issue mini is going to pick up as part of an initiative to introduce new characters into the Batman Animated Series line of toys, with Templeton designing these new additions in Bruce Timm's signature style with the square jaws we've come to know from this animated series. It's not my favorite thing, but it's one of those things that's so ubiquitous in pop culture, I'm curious to know more about this mini.
Yeah.
I'd say even people that aren't Batman fans sat down and watched that cartoon, because when it came out, that was high-quality stuff.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
So I may have to keep an eye out for that. But something else that I'm going to have to keep an eye out for, and I'm going to say this now, Punchline may be the most important character debut DC's had in a decade. We've discussed Punchline on and off. The new girl that's working for the Joker, possibly a paramour, although there's no indications that's absolutely happening. And what we found out last week is that Punchline will debut in a single panel cameo in Batman number 89 by James Tynion IV and Gilliam March and Tomo Mori, right? Mm-hmm. Then she will make her first full appearance in Year of the Villain, Hell Arisen number 3. The thing that makes all of this important is that as of late last week, Diamond Comics, the publisher and distribution company of comic books, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've completely sold out of both of these issues.
Already?
DC is already planning second prints of both comics, neither of which have hit store shelves yet.
Wow, so they might actually be able to compete with Marvel.
We'll get to that at another
sales.
point. But all I'm saying, though, is that how rare is it that a comic sells out before it sells?
I'm rather curious if it's because of if it's the story or it's people, getting ahead of the game and getting first releases for collectors' reasons.
It would technically have to be both, because no one had really heard about this character up until 2 weeks ago. And I think there is something... It's not just a character, though. I think it's also her connection to the Joker. The Joker is a defining villain in DC, especially when it comes to Batman. So anything that's connected to him is going to get some sort of extra attention. But the idea that this is some kind of new independent character that both works with and for the Joker, but seems to have her own decision-making process, that makes her relatively unique. I mean, even Harley Quinn, when she debuted, she was a Joker lackey more than she was her own character.
Yeah.
Except it seems very evident that if the Joker is willing to send Punchline against, the Batman sidekicks directly, she is something else. So I think there's a lot of storytelling potential in Punchline, and I think long-term fans see that. I think even casual fans see that. Whether or not it'll be fulfilled is another matter entirely, but I think people's interest in this character exists and is very strong.
And I've seen some pushback like, oh, it's just another Harley knockoff and it's just to replace her. But I am hoping that it's not. I'm hoping that that she'll be able to stand on her own 2 feet and not be defined by Joker or any connection to any other character. Yeah,
the few pieces of dialogue I've seen from online previews of her appearances indicate that whereas Harley Quinn was... Her primary motivation working with the Joker was to impress him, right? Mm-hmm. It was to make her seem more important in his eyes. Punchline doesn't seem to be as kitschy or as concerned with what the Joker thinks. She seems to be very much into the results. She's very matter-of-fact in her mode of speech. So it's not a question of whether or not the Joker likes it. It's just a question of what he wants and is she going to do it, to which the answer just seems to be yes. So it's not... I can't say it's because she's a mercenary and this is a job for her, or if there's something very specific. It could just be she likes the Joker's idea of introducing absolute mayhem, and that appeals to her. Goodness knows, that sounds like every other goth I've ever met in my life. So, I do think Punchline is going to be a very different character from Harley Quinn. I think she is... You know what? It's a little bit too obvious of a metaphor, but it's like comparing a jack-in-a-box to a rapier. Mm-hmm. And I think Punchline is that rapier.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know what to expect, and I don't know if I'm really gonna...
Well, I can actually help you a little bit with that, because because of comic book solicitations, we know who Punchline's first target is. And she's not starting at the bottom of the barrel. She's going directly after Dick Grayson.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I think you told me that.
No, I mean, the Joker is sending her against the individual members of the Bat family. But she's not starting with Damian or Jason Todd, the odd people out. She's going straight for pretty much the person who Bruce Wayne meant to be his replacement. Which is a big statement in and of itself. Not just of her abilities, but also the Joker's confidence in her. He knows these people inside and out and how dangerous they are, but instead of just having her attack people that Grayson knows, she's going directly after Grayson. And this starts in Nightwing number 72 by Dan Jurgens and Ronan Cliquet. That's pretty fearsome, in my opinion. As well as an indication of how fearless Punchline is. But that's not the only Batman character getting their own series, although this one threw me way off. It's coming out this May. It's being written by Dave Wielgosz and art by Sumit Kumar. And one of Batman's longest enemies is coming back to Gotham. And I don't know for what means. The Man-Bat is returning.
Really?
He's getting his own series. You're not familiar with the Man-Bat?
Yeah, I know who it is. I'm familiar. Just
Man-Bat's he's been an anti-hero in comics lately. But the official solicitation reads, quote, "For years, Kirk Langstrom has struggled with his monstrous alter ego, Man-Bat, and the serum that transformed him. But he's finally hit rock bottom following a devastating setback, and he's going to take out his anger on every single citizen of Gotham City. Will the combined might of the Batman and the GCPD be enough to stop Langstrom once and for all, or will this just be the start of the Man-Bat's devastation?" Unquote. I don't quite know what to say about this. This almost sounds like the plot of a Batman comic instead of something that's featuring the villain. I hope there's a bigger plan than this. I like to think there is since they're starting the comic. Unfortunately, another character series is ending in May, and this one I'm a little confused with.
who?
Supergirl.
Really?
Yeah, her comic's coming to a close in May with issue number 42, due to hit store shelves on May 27th. Actually, the latest creative team, Jody Houser and Rachel Stott, just started their run on the comics with issue 37 this past December. The character right now is a major part of the Infected storyline as one of the Secret Six of the Batman Who Laughs. The solicit for issue number 42 reads, quote, "Deemed a threat by the U.S. military, Supergirl is now a wanted villain. General Corvid has come for our hero, and she won't give up until Kara's gone for good. Meanwhile, the superstorm rages stronger than ever, while hundreds remain helpless against it. Can Supergirl prove that she's the hero the people once believed her to be, or will she let everyone down, including herself? Find out in the pulse-pounding series conclusion." Unquote.
What happened?
She's a member of the Infected. I imagine she's going to have to prove to a few people that she's not a psychotic supervillain. However, it seems like odd timing to me. I mean, the character is now part of an integrated universe in the CW television shows. Because of Clark Kent's reveal, you would think that Supergirl, both retaining an identity and being a hero, would be more important than ever. I mean, obviously they're doing this because sales drop off. There's really no other reason, unless they have a new story and they want to start a new number one. But that feels like kind of a waste of time at this moment.
Well, her show on the CW is still apart from the rest of the main shows.
They're not part of the Arrowverse? I heard all those shows were integrated.
Oh no,
now.
they are integrated, but she is literally in a different dimension from
Yeah,
the rest
they
of
are.
them.
Yeah, I thought the Crisis on Infinite Earths brought them all into the same place.
No, Barry Allen accidentally found a way
To
to her dimension. That's about when I stopped watching it.
Oh, no, I mean, the latest event actually brought all these characters together, as far as I knew.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in the latest series, it's like even Wynn is getting a name because he's helping run the tower where all these characters intersect. They're having their own watchtower or something.
Oh, gotcha.
So they all exist, as far as I know, in the same dimension now, thanks to the Crisis. Similar to how the comic book version of the Crisis brought all these heroes from separate timelines into the same reality. So, I don't quite know what to say about that, but like I was saying, the character is part of now an integrated universe on TV. It just seems like it's the perfect time to really launch the Kara Danvers character into a new place as far as DC's usage and where she stands in the universe. Instead, it seems like things are kind of getting shut down on her end.
Well, it's because she's not part of the Trinity.
I'm disappointed. I don't quite know what else to say about it because I still don't know what origin for the character they're currently using. I almost feel like if they're making a new timeline, can they just add like Supergirl being super in there so I can really just relax a bit? Well, The Flash is about to get his 750th issue. There have not been 750 consecutive issues of The Flash. However, DC has decided to return to its classical numbering for both this series and Wonder Woman. What we do know about The Flash number 750 is it will be another giant-sized issue, probably for the price of $9.99. And the story is going to be titled Flash of All Worlds. The story will have the Flash trapped by the Mirror Master, and he has to find a way to break free from the realm of reflections and distortions he finds himself in. Sounds very Silver Age.
Yeah.
But I don't have much information beyond that. It almost sounds like one of those realms where somebody hopes that the hero will be annoyed to death rather than actually stopped.
The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
However, the Flash is about to have another problem. According to upcoming solicits, he's going to have a new group of enemies to deal with, starting with Flash number 756 by Joshua Williamson and Christian Deuce. The Reverse Flash is back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, except this time he's not alone. Now, the cover seems to have updated versions of Captain Cold, Gorilla Grodd, the Golden Glider, and the Trickster harassing him while he's kneeling next to a gravestone, okay? And of course, this is Barry Allen.
Right.
Now, there's going to be a new phrase here, and I want you to listen carefully. Quote, "At last, the Flash is free of paradox, but that freedom came at a great cost. For years, the Reverse Flash has wanted Barry Allen to suffer, but he's always been defeated by the Flash family. Now, the Reverse Flash is going to build his own family to help him get revenge as he demands. This issue kicks off a new epic story that will force the Flash into what may be his final race." Unquote. A Reverse Flash family. I don't know if that means that one of the Reverse Flashes is going to create new speedsters to help him harass the Flash, or if he's just going to recruit a group of villainous speedsters we've already seen before.
Don't know.
I don't know. I'm thinking we might be looking too much into it, and it might be far more simple.
I couldn't say. It feels like a bit much. It's one of those generalistic problems in comic books, is when a certain character gets a fully defined pantheon of villains, writers tend to gravitate towards certain ones, and the Flash is as guilty of that as anybody.
Yeah.
And it always seems like the same half-dozen villains are the same ones that are harassing Barry Allen in just about every storyline. I've almost lost count of the versions of Captain Cold I've seen over the years. So I hope they break out and create something new. In that solicit, you heard the name Paradox. I got a little bit of information as to what that is. It was a character originally named Chris. This character lived in Central City with his family and worked as a scientist. And he had an accident very similar to the one that gave Barry Allen his powers. Chris is hit with a bolt of energy, and it allows him to temporarily feel the power of the time stream flowing through him. Unfortunately, it goes away, and it's kind of like a drug. He keeps trying to recreate the accident. And he works for a year to do this before the next major accident actually happens. Now, Chris was nearby when the Flash went up against the time-displaced character known as the Turtle in Flash Year 1. During the fight, Chris's powers just kind of activated him and threw him into an area outside the multiverse along with other people. As time passes in this weird little pocket realm, Chris builds a new lab, kills everyone he was there with, and eventually uses his powers to travel through the time stream to meet up with his family again in the current day. But the energies have affected him, and he now looks like a monster. His family wanted nothing to do with him. And from there, Paradox travels further forward into the 25th century. Then he's attacked from agents by the Time Institute, who realize he has temporal powers. And it's this attack that causes Paradox to go full villain. He daydreams about seizing power over this new future. Then Eobard Thorne, the Reverse Flash, and his team appear to arrest Paradox. Paradox spends years in Iron Heights, with every alteration of the time stream causing him pain, which means the Flash existence must be driving him insane.
Ooh.
So eventually he gets free when Barry Allen and Wally West break the Force barrier, but his time in prison has caused him to develop a lot of anger towards Flashes, who he blames for his entire predicament. This is Paradox. That's actually one of the more original creations DC's come up with lately. I've never been a fan of time-traveling villains. There's too much capability for reality-breaking storylines.
Yep.
However, this is just so personal against the Flash. I like the concept. I sent you guys an image of Paradox when he met his family, and whew, he be ugly.
Ooh.
He looks
wow.
Yeah, he looks like Doomsday had anorexia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's really scary. I don't know. I still can't say I'm interested enough to read it, but I do like that DC's pushing the envelope a bit with its creations. As a matter of fact, Hal Jordan may be on a new mission that'll help him reshape the DC universe.
Oh?
Yeah, Hal Jordan has recently returned to the DC universe as of the Green Lantern Season 2. And he has a new job to select, or to go and notify new characters that they are the Guardians of the Universe. The original Guardians are departing the main DC universe to participate in something they call the Ultra War. Which, Jesse, sounds about as 90s as you were describing.
Right.
It's part of some kind of unseen multi-crisis. But before they leave, the Guardians of the Universe upgrade Hal Jordan's power battery in unknown ways. And then they've sent him to their homeworld of Maltus to recruit new, younger Guardians to oversee the Green Lantern Corps. Hal is now working with the sentient salt Green Lantern known as Rick. And he's able to actually accomplish his goal. But the problem is that these new, younger Guardians of the Universe see their progenitors as seeing things in old ways, and they're really looking forward to shaking up the system.
This is another one of those generational stories, isn't it?
I don't know, and I will grant you that the Guardians were very bad at what they did. I mean, we are talking about characters who, before the Green Lanterns, created the Manhunters, which were a bunch of robots, but these robots' idea of peacekeeping was, okay, if we destroy all sentient life, then nobody can break a law. Perfect.
Oh, wow, they're taking the Ultron route.
Yeah. And the Guardians have betrayed the Green Lanterns a couple times. They've made some very dubious decisions. It has not gone particularly well. So, to turn over this new crew, it looks at the other one and say, well, this is screwed up. Yeah, I can kind of agree with that, but they're already talking about how the Green Lantern system of patrolling things like police officers is just way too antiquated. This sounds frightening. What do you think? I mean, maybe the Green Lantern's modus operandi is a bit old, but I can't say that the Lanterns are unnecessary in DC.
I don't know. I am not a fan of these stories that kind of make this hard defining line between previous and current generation. But
I don't know. I'd say I used to not be a fan of them, but we've reached this weird point in American society where there are these generational gaps that we need to address in some way, and entertainment can help us do that. I know it sounds trite, but goodness knows it's hard enough getting these people to sit down and talk to each other.
yeah, I guess.
Speaking of generational problems, there's going to be a new one for the Manhunter. As we know, she was recently accused of being the leader of the Leviathan crew, and it turns out that the Leviathan himself is the first Manhunter, Mark Shaw. Well, the current Manhunter, Kate Spencer, will be stepping in to pick up the pieces in a new miniseries by Mark Andreyko and Renato Guedes. It's going to be called Manhunters: The Secret History. It's going on sale this May. It's following the Manhunter as she investigates Leviathan's plot, only to discover deep and dark secrets of the DC universe. According to the solicit, quote, after the revelation of Leviathan's true identity in the pages of Event Leviathan, Kate Spencer, an earlier Manhunter, must go on a quest to uncover how deep Leviathan's plans go. What Kate didn't expect is a conspiracy that goes back to the very beginnings of DC history. Unearthing the past to save the future is the Manhunters: The Secret History. Eisner Award-winning writer Mark Andreyko returns to his classic crime fighter in this hard-hitting miniseries that will reverberate across the DC universe. Unquote. It's going to be a 5-issue mini. See, this is one of the reasons why we need a definitive DC timeline, to know what timeline these characters are actually looking into. Sometimes it gets a little weird when they look back in history and you think, wait, was that pre-crisis or post-crisis?
Yeah, that's all discombobulated.
I'm just wondering if it's like too little too late. There was already so much of a hullabaloo about one of the Manhunters leading this new anti-espionage organization. This almost feels like they needed to spend time building up Kate Spencer before that happened.
Mm.
You know, I can't speak for you guys, but I'm still a little unclear as to how a Manhunter operates.
Same.
I really need to look up a Wikipedia at some point. Last up in DC Comic news, we have an answer to another question that probably not a lot of people are asking, but I was curious myself. This May in Aquaman number 57, Aquaman is still trying to keep ahead of several people who want his daughter. Because with Mera in a coma as the Queen of Atlantis, that means whoever controls the daughter has control of Atlantis itself. Which is not something that Arthur Curry seems to want right now. He just wants to keep his new child safe. Well, because of the solicit, we actually have the name of this young girl.
What is it?
Well, I imagine this is short for something else, because it refers to her as Princess Andy. I know. It's being done by Kelly Sue DeConnick with art by Miguel Mendonca. The solicit reads, quote, Mera wakes up from her coma more powerful than ever before, but finds her kingdom in absolute peril. Meanwhile, with Ocean Master hell-bent on kidnapping the infant Princess Andy to assert his power, Aquaman takes his daughter on the run as far away from the water as he can manage, unquote. This is going to be going on sale May 20th. I don't know. It's one of those cases where it's not a story I'm looking to read, but it almost feels like a story that's overdue. Mera and Aquaman in DC history have such a wild on-again and off-again relationship. I'd almost swear at this point that Arthur Curry is an AKA for Dennis Leary. I know that sounds trite, but I mean, he seems to have the same problem that Leary's characters often have of commitment, as well as just a problem relating to his partner. But I guess it's nice to see Arthur taking an actual interest in his child, let alone, I would like to see this one live. Aquaman's history with children in DC Comics is fraught with problems.
I think just DC Comics don't do well with children in general.
You're only saying that because the Joker's beaten one to death and nearly beaten another one to death.
And Batman can't take care of any of them.
He couldn't even take care of himself. He had to have Alfred. And then you remove Alfred and he's a mess. Anyway.
Oh, this all sounds so complicated.
Everyone has daddy issues and the parents have kid issues?
Marvel did it better.
But DC killed more kids.
Okay, ripcord. Pulling the ripcord.
Whoop.
Last up is our general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. We have hit February, and that means that Comic-Con news, San Diego Comic-Con news particularly, starts to drip out. And there's actually a little bit of news that doesn't have to do with Comic-Con itself, but its venue, the San Diego Convention Center. Which, I know, Joanna, you haven't seen, but I think Jesse can agree, it's a pretty darn nice place.
Yeah.
You know, it's big, it's well taken care of, it's pretty, it has a lot of natural light coming through it. However, it is not big enough to hold what San Diego Comic-Con has become. There have been a couple attempts to expand on the convention center, but those are usually stopped by funding issues and or environmental issues. However, they may be getting ready to take care of one of those issues within the city. On March 3rd, San Diego has a measure on the ballot, and you have to vote yes or no to Measure C, which looks to raise the hotel tax to fund a number of causes, including the convention center expansion. They also want to tackle homeless services and street repair with it. Back in 2006, San Diego had Measure D, also known as the Citizens Plan, that sought to expand the convention center through a hotel tax. Measure C has a few key differences. First of all, the 2016 measure wanted to raise the hotel tax a full 5%, which would have made it one of the highest hotel taxes in the nation. Measure C proposes a change and increase of 1.25%. So the total percentage would be just 13.25 instead of 15.5. The rates would increase on a sliding scale, actually. The higher increases would go to the hotels closer to downtown. So the idea is that the customers of a hotel likely to benefit the most from the results of the measure will pay the most. It's an interesting way to go about it. 59% of the funds raised by Measure C would go towards the convention center expansion and upkeep. 31% would go to homelessness services, and the remaining 10% would go to street repair. Through 2024, the 10% street repair funds would go instead towards homeless services. I kind of hope they make this work, because I can agree that making the funds tied up with a hotel tax is pretty smart. That means the people going to these conventions are the ones paying for the hotel expansion. I can agree with that. Or the convention center expansion. I can also agree that there is room for the convention center to expand, and it's very likely that it needs to happen. The only question I have, and it's a minor one, is that if they expand the convention center, is it more likely to draw bigger events? It doesn't seem to host a whole lot of large events through the year. Granted, San Diego Comic-Con brings in enough money where they really don't need to have a whole lot of events there through the year. But if they're going through this much work, I'd like to see them get more than, like... The general event this thing seems to draw is, like, events that have 8,000 people, which seems really minuscule compared to other places that are much smaller. You know what I mean? You know, San Diego is a nice downtown. It's a little pricey, but, I mean, they have more than enough hotels to deal with what they need to deal with. Generally. Comic-Con is one of those few exceptions, but there's very few things like it. So, I'm sorry, I'm railing a bit.
No, I get what you're saying, though.
Well, in other San Diego Comic-Con news, they have announced the second wave of guests. These guests are getting a spotlight panel of at least an hour, as well as being involved in signings through the course of the weekend. First up, we have the writer and artist on Upgrade Soul, Ezra Clayton Daniels. The writer and editor on A Marvelous Life, The Amazing Story of Stan Lee, Danny Fingeroth. The author of The Keeper of the Lost City series and the Skyfall series, Shannon Messenger. The writer on 30 Days of Night, Criminal, Macabre, and Mystery Society, Steve Niles. The writer and artist on The Loneliness of Long Distance Cartoonist and Killing and Dying, Adrian Tomine. And this last one is usually seen in the San Diego area during Comic-Con, but is not often seen as a guest. The actor and author of You're Never Weird on the Internet, Almost, and the creator of The Guild, Felicia Day, is a spotlight guest this year.
Ooh, she's cool.
She's usually around the area doing a lot of third-party events, but she's very rarely a part of the happenings during Comic-Con. So this is kind of an aberrant year. I'd be interested to see her panel, though. Her writing is fun, and I don't mean her writing necessarily on TV shows. I mean just reading about her, relating her geeky life and all the things she's interested in. She sounds like one of those very verbose people that'd be fun to talk to. So I'd be curious to go see her panel just to see her standpoint on fandom and everything else. Meanwhile, the numbers have been released for the comic book sales for the month of January 2020. And there's some news to break down here, but it's not that much different from what we've been dealing with. It's another month where Marvel is far and away the biggest selling comic book company in America. As far as a retail market share, they had 39.98% of the market.
Really?
Yeah, which basically means every 5 comic books sold by Diamond Publishers, 2 of them were Marvel comics, which is... It doesn't sound like an overwhelming amount, but that is the vast majority of comics. The next highest selling was DC Comics at 29.33%. So basically between 1 and 2 comics out of every 5 was DC. Image Comics was the next highest as far as market share at 5.6. IDW came in at 4.05, Dark Horse at 3.09, Boom at 3.04. I was kind of surprised to find out that Dynamite didn't place as high as Viz Studios.
Really?
Yeah, Viz Media had 2.59% of retail share. Dynamite had 2.21.
Really, only?
I'm not surprised that neither company had a big share of retailer. I'm just surprised that Viz sold more comic books than Dynamite. That did surprise me quite a bit. Although Dynamite, they must be charging more per comic because they actually had 2.08% of dollar share, whereas Viz only had 1.04. Curiouser and curiouser. But when it does come to dollar share, again, Marvel Comics is dominant. Imagine this. When it came to dollar market share, Marvel Comics had 46.67%. Nearly 50 cents out of every dollar spent by retailers was on a Marvel comic.
Wow.
DC came in at a far second at 29.73%.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was looking through the numbers, and I often thought that the difference was just the sheer number of different Marvel characters. Marvel has a lot of different series that don't really relate to any particular character. They seem to try a little bit of everything in their lineup. I mean, would you guys agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and I always thought DC just specialized in a few characters, therefore they simply put out fewer series in a month. Now get this. In January of 2020, Marvel Comics shipped out 101 different comics. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
DC shipped out 98.
Huh.
Really?
Yeah.
3 difference?
Yes! A difference of 3 series over the course of the month, yet the share in the money earned by the two companies is so vastly different.
Yeah.
There's something seriously wrong with this. And again, I'm a Marvelite, I'm not a DC person, but competition makes everything better. I mean, everybody tries harder. Yet it seems like DC is not offering the competition that they should at this point.
I say they should diversify, but no one has reason to read up on any other characters since this not brought up as much. It's
well, there's another
the circle of doom.
There's another part of this that kind of bothers me because DC had the highest selling comic book in January of 2020, Wonder Woman number 750. It's an anniversary issue. Of course it's a high seller. Doesn't bother me. But that high seller also had a cover price of $9.99. A $10 comic. Again, not that different compared to the Batman and Superman anniversary issues. That's well earned. But you have a $10 comic, yet you're still earning 15% less of the overall money that was spent by retailers? There's something very wrong with this equation.
Yeah, really.
And unfortunately, the news doesn't get any better for DC Comics. They only had 2 of the top 10 selling comics in the month. They had Wonder Woman 750 at number 1, and then at number 7, they had Batman number 86.
What was so special about that issue?
It was the first issue post Tom King.
Ah.
But, I mean, think about that. Only 2 comics in the top 10. The others, there wasn't any independent. They were all Marvel. Thor number 1, Star Wars number 1, X-Men number 4, X-Men number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy number 1, Amazing Spider-Man 38, Amazing Spider-Man number 37, and even number 10 surprised me. Star number 1.
Star?
Remember we were talking about the villain from the Captain Marvel series who was the living embodiment of the Reality Stone?
Right, yeah, yeah.
Her number 1 cracked the top 10. And it's not even that there's a case of a clear-cut, top character in Marvel Comics. Like I said, Thor, Star Wars, X-Men, Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man, and Star. It's not like DC sales when most of the top books that they put out in a month involve Batman. I mean, Marvel's characters are all over the place in the top 10.
It's like they have more diverse and fleshed out characters.
It's really, really odd to me. And even as a Marvelite, it shouldn't be that clear cut. That bothers the heck out of me in ways I can't really describe. So, I mean, I don't know what you guys think of what's going on there, but I would really like to see some other characters by DC be elevated, be pushed, be something beyond just the characters that pop up in Batman and Superman stories.
Yep.
I'll be honest, I would like to see DC try for 1 year, not use the Trinity, and try to spotlight other characters.
The thing is, though, you can't just throw that on them. It's been pretty clear by the sales that DC relies on these characters to have sales.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean that the readers really aren't picking up other stories in DC Comics. If it wasn't for the anniversary issue, I would really have not been surprised if Wonder Woman had trouble cracking the top 20 in general. Not because it's a bad series, but simply because DC readers don't buy them. You know, if you stopped producing Batman and Superman comics and still had all the ancillaries, the Robins, the detective comics, their sales might fall off a cliff simply because their readers aren't buying these books. Somehow you've got to get DC readers to try more characters in their lineup, and I don't know a good way to do that. So much of DC's storytelling revolves around Batman and Superman. I don't know how you divorce them from that without collapsing the universe. It's a three-dimensional problem I don't have an adequate answer for. I wish I did. If I did, I'd probably be a writer. Meanwhile, Marvel Comics is going to have a presence at South by Southwest this year. Marvel's editor-in-chief C.B. Cebulski and Marvel Entertainment Executive Vice President and Creative Director Joe Quesada, they're going to be presenting the panel Marvel Comics, The Oral History of the X-Men at the 34th South by Southwest Conference in Austin, Texas, next month. Per South by Southwest official website, quote, The Oral History of the X-Men will see Cebulski and Quesada lead an interactive discussion on the storied history of the most beloved superhero team of all time, unquote. That's odd. This says it's about the X-Men, not the Avengers.
I was going to say Fantastic Four?
Yeah, I was about to say, I read in the title, this is about the X-Men. What the heck? No, I'd actually like to hear about that. I mean, the X-Men do seem to be front and center in Marvel storytelling right now. And goodness knows, when we do the Experts podcast, all we seem to be doing is an oral history of the X-Men.
Yeah.
I don't know, you want to horn in on it? Just kind of kick them off the stage and see what we can do? I hear nervousness everywhere. Last up, when it comes to general comic news, I found an unexpected piece of information just today. Eisner Award-winning writer has Mark Waid. He's been named publisher of the Los Angeles-based Humanoids comics. He was previously their director of creative development when he was named to the role in October of 2018. According to Humanoids Comics CEO Fabrice Geiger, quote, Humanoids is internationally renowned for its history of publishing prestigious, groundbreaking graphic novels. With his passion for publishing, respect for the medium's past, attention to today's political and cultural landscapes, and keen eye for spotting talent, Mark Waid is perfectly suited to lead the Humanoids publishing team as the new publisher of Humanoids' English language efforts. We are thrilled with the work Mark has done, and it's time to expand his responsibilities. It's a significant passing of the baton, unquote. I don't know, I guess it's one of those things that matters more to me than to you guys. I've read a lot of Wade's stuff over the years, and I think he's a very prescient writer. He really seems to know how to channel a lot of what people are feeling today into his writing. Maybe you'll get a chance to check that out, because I do have the first volume of his Ignited comics up for us to read. We were talking about that. That is the one about kids who develop powers after a school shooting.
Oh, yeah.
And not as a result of the school shooting. Something else is happening, but there was a school shooting at the venue where these kids are growing up. And considering where we are as a society in this country, it's not a pleasant story, but it feels very prescient.
Mm-hmm.
The subject of this week is Robotech by Titan Comics from 2017. This is a retelling of the classic 80s property, and I'm trying really hard not to say super mean things, only because I wish the company that has the rights to Robotech would stop re-upping. I would really like the chance to buy Macross Frontier and Macross Delta in this country. I'm sorry. The art, or the writing, is by Brian Wood. The art is by Marco Torrini. The colors are by Marco Lesko, and the letters are by John Workman. And I was experiencing a bit of culture shock reading this comic. I will start off by saying I was a fan of the original run of Robotech, and I say was because, again, I would like to see the original versions of these series, not the Frankenstein American story that I enjoyed so much as a child. However, I did when this series first came out, I just kind of wrote it off. I thought, okay, so the company is trying to retain the license, so they're having a comic retelling of the story. The first couple issues led me to think, okay, this is a slightly modernized retelling of all of Robotech. But after a few issues, the story has taken a hard right turn into new territory, and I'm a little bit off my guard here. Jesse,
okay.
Joanna, I take it you weren't a watcher of Robotech back in the day.
Not at all.
Jesse, how about you?
VHS.
Okay.
A lot of VHS.
What did you think about the shift in story in the latter half of this volume?
I think it was definitely a bit of a refresher from just showing what I've already known.
Well, to me, it's a major turn. I mean, let me start off by saying this property was based off of 3 different animes that were stitched together into a, air quotes, coherent story. But it's very, its origins are very 80s in storytelling. The heroes are all primarily just like male stereotypes of one sort or another. The women, unless they're specifically from a warrior class, are relegated to these roles that remind me of office women.
Mm-hmm.
And even the designs, although they've been modernized some, they're still very much in these very bizarre 80s bases, the coiffed hair, the thing that it seems like everybody here had a can of mousse on standby.
Yeah.
The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
But the first issue, it reminded me a lot of the original series. You know, Rick Hunter, the young pilot whose older brother is the head of the Air Forces of Macross City at this point. He's young, he's brash, and he's not very bright. However, it did seem like this version of Roy Fokker was hiding twice as many secrets as the original ever could.
Yeah, because he was a lot more joyful to be around, and he's always been this kind of a sour character throughout this entire read.
Yeah, I mean, I think the original Roy Fokker was like more maverick than before we even knew what that meant.
Yeah.
You know, he was definitely this carefree individual who just seemed to be able to fly as a talent rather than a skill. The current version of him, he actually seems like the commander of an armed force. He seems to actually wear responsibility.
Yeah, which is like took a lot of fun out of the character.
If there was a character, though, that had a funectomy, it was Lin Min-Mei.
She got a bit sassy and far more annoying to me.
Oh, don't give me this bit stuff. I mean, I know she's supposed to be 16, 17 in both versions of these stories, but she didn't even come off as like prima donna-ish in this comic. She came off as just acerbic and nearly mean and a little bit bipolar.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's a lot better than the previous version we got, who is just very submissive.
Well, she wasn't just submissive, she was shrill. Her voice could make cats run in fear. I'm sure her voice could jam a radar.
Wow.
If you ever get a chance to watch a couple of the cartoons, she appears in like the first 2 or 3 episodes, and every time she speaks, you will have to turn down the volume on your earbuds.
Oh, great. Count me out.
Jesse, back me up here, dude.
I didn't have a problem with it, but then again, at the time I was watching this, I was a dumb child.
So nostalgia covers a great many number of faults.
No.
Well,
no, it does
nostalgia.
not.
It's
No.
just not. I was like, I'm looking at the pretty moving pictures.
Yeah, I think Jesse's aware of the more complicated nature of his thought then versus now. I will say the art is a little bit of a mixed bag. It seems like it's very technically proficient, but the artist was going for a very photorealistic look for a lot of people, and it wasn't helping.
That never works on comics. That style never works for comics.
It can, but you need a prominent and well-talented CG shading or colorist to work on these things. You have to really flesh out your colors to work within the lines there. And unfortunately, the colorist on this series is adequate, but it's not helping the imagery here.
Well, no, the black lines don't help with that.
Yeah.
If you take the black lines out and replace with something else in lieu of that, it will probably be a lot better. But otherwise, it makes everyone like...
I don't know. I was staring at the images for a while, and I think if you remove the color, the images would pretty much flatten out pretty quick. There wasn't a lot of detail in the characters, unfortunately. They really relied on the colorist to develop a lot of the facial contours and features. But the one thing I've noticed is that if you flip to like the 12th page of the first comic, it's a lot of the bridge crew like futzing around, right? during the original attack by the Zentradi. If you take a good look at the faces, outside of Captain Gloval, the faces are devoid of a lot of detail. However, if you look at the hands of every character, including the women, there's too much detail there. Their hands look like they're 60 years old.
Yeah.
The faces are devoid of a lot, but they're also devoid of a lot of emotion as well. So
a bit, but I always give first volumes a lot of leeway in that because artists are often trying to learn the characters at this point.
yeah, emotion rarely came into these faces.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, these early pages also reminded me as to how far we've come as a society. I mean, this bridge crew is full of women who should be near the top of the command structure on this ship. However, they're all dressed in long jackets, long skirts. They don't look like commanders of military. They look like they're there to get Captain Gloval his coffee and his pipe.
Yeah, I noticed the very striking difference between the captain's uniform and their outfits. I cringe to call them uniforms because they weren't.
Well, to be honest, Captain Global's uniform was a lot more flowy in the animated show.
Yeah.
It was full on
It's
Captain
more like
Harlock.
Yeah, it looks more like an admiral than a captain. Like it's more
He was
ornate.
he was pretty much an admiral outside of the name, but at the same time, I remember you rarely get to see his eyes because that cap was always so far over his face.
Yeah, he was a captain because while he was high up in the military, he was not like an armed forces commanding officer. He was put in charge of this particular ship.
And mind you, this is also was an international effort.
Yeah, international is the wrong word for it because the arrival of this alien ship caused most of the militaries to stop fighting over territorial squabbles, and they formed a united world government. So he's high up in a world military body that still has it's in effect it's Joint Forces Council that's still above him. Mm-hmm. However, you're right. He is taking a lot of leeway in his command structure there. And the big secret that most of the military, or most of the world doesn't know, is that the technology of the planes, the Veritex, and their transformability wasn't just because it was kitschy and fun and we could just do it. They were specifically designed to fight what a few were aware of as giant humanoid aliens that they thought may come one day to reclaim this mysterious ship that landed on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a fair response, but at the same time, it feels like that if you're aware that giant humanoids could come down and attack, more people need to be aware of this. They're already aware that aliens exist. The ship hit the island. You know what I mean? This feels like an unnecessary secret.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the first issue overall is a pretty faithful retelling of Robotech.
It's a bit rushed, but yeah.
A little, yeah. I do give it credit for pacing. They didn't spend a lot of time on some of the more boring aspects of the original cartoon. They got into just telling the story and moving it along very quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't really like a lot of the exposition dialogue that they put in there as natural words.
You're right.
Spout out.
You're right. We spend the majority of these first 5 issues with Rick Hunter and Lynn Minmay, neither of which seem to talk like either a person or a person within their particular age group. Rick seemed to be talking like a junior... Sorry?
I said, yeah, I noticed that. I was agreeing.
Yeah, Rick seemed to talk like a junior high student. Minmay seemed to be talking like a high school student who was still mad at the popular girls for stealing her comb. As a matter of fact, in the second issue, something else that struck out about me was when it came to Lisa Hayes, the functional second in command of the SDF-1. I don't think her smile muscles work.
Again, like I said, there's no emotion on almost anyone's face.
She just always seemed to be she always seemed to be really perturbed and angry.
Oh, she was always the what was that archetype they had back in the 80s? The stuck-up. I'm looking for a nicer word to say.
I'm not sure what you're leading to.
She's a very strict and stiff person, or very.
She's a by-the-book personality.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she's still that here, but it just comes with an extra, I don't know, an extra notch on the dial. They just turned it up a bit. I do give the comics artist credit because the designs of Britai and his lieutenant were updated fairly well. Exodor. Although Britai looks like he just escaped the Borg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not fan. The head shape's really throwing me off.
Okay. Well, the attack by these giant aliens on Earth goes pretty much the way I remember from the cartoon, where the SDF-1 tries to use its fold engines to get it away from the Earth and hopefully draw the alien attack away, accidentally sweeps up the entirety of the island that this thing is based out of, and throws it beyond Pluto.
Well, I thought it was really strange that they actually put a face to the doctor engineer that's been running the tech.
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
That's kind of an interesting detail, because I read the novelization of Robotech back in the day, and they did give him a name and a face in those books, but in the cartoon he never really had one. It was a name they referenced a bit, but we never saw who he was. My goodness, I don't quite know what to say, because this almost requires you to have a decent knowledge of Robotech to understand the changes at the very least. The unfortunate side effect, though, of the fold operation was that they lost their fold engines. They appear to have continued traveling without the ship.
Yeah, so I have zero frame of reference.
Okay.
And I kind of gather that it folds time and space around them.
Yes, it's
But
function.
there's no explanation as to anything else.
Well, the unfortunate detail that was kind of omitted in the comics was that the fold engines were something else they discovered on the ship. Those aren't human creations.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow they discovered what they do, and this was its maiden voyage. They tried it as an emergency measure, and yeah, functioned pretty well for the emergency. What they didn't know is that the engines just kind of kept going. I don't think they were designed that way. Obviously, they screwed up the execution.
The novelization puts a lot more circular thought with what happened to those, but that's for another story.
Yeah, and it's not like the novelization did it all that well to begin with. Oh god, the novels are very readable. They're fine and everything, but again, it's based on very 80s storytelling, so you have to give it a lot of leeway to make it work.
And them trying to clutch together three various different series together with
Yeah.
only giant mech suits as a linchpin.
You know, issue 3 was pretty much focused on one episode in the cartoon where Min-May and Hunter have managed to get their way into the SDF-1 and are trying to survive, even though people don't know that they're within the bulkheads of the ship.
I would admit him shooting his way in there would have alerted something.
You would think so, but I couldn't say. I don't know how everything's wired up. The whole scene of them going outside to get a giant tuna, well, not get a giant tuna, I think they were looking to see if they could... They were trying to find a window and get someone's attention, I think?
I think in the original one is that they're like running out of food, and I think Rick Herring got the idea that, hey, there's a fish out there, I'm gonna go get it, and he got it. This one's like slight change where they both went out and got it, and she took the initiative to take it back. So I guess it makes sense given that she's works in a restaurant, so.
Oh, it was much more harrowing in the cartoon, and it was very, again, stereotypical 80s. He went outside by himself. It was her job to watch him. So there was a little bit of an updating as far as the roles of the characters within the comic book. As much as they could, anyway, without completely destroying the story itself.
So I kind of thought the random fish floating through space was really bizarre.
Well, they took the island as well as some of the surrounding water too. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I gather that because of all the ice and everything, but wouldn't it also be frozen solid?
Yes, I thought the same thing too when she stuck a knife in it and there was blood coming out.
Yeah,
that should be solid.
Sliced.
Well, it shouldn't just be cold. It should be bathed in solar radiation.
Yeah, that too.
You know, it should be both frozen and flash fried, as far as I understand.
I don't know, they're out in Pluto's past Pluto, so it should be that severe.
I don't know. I've never stood outside in the hard vacuum outside Pluto and said, it's a little warm.
I'm not going to pretend I understand the science. So.
There's radiation everywhere, so...
Yeah, but by happy accident of the transpositioning of Macross City within the SDF-1, Hunter and Minmay are found by rebuilding crews, I guess would be the right maintenance crews.
Maintenance crews. They're trying to attach one of the ships to the something on the side of the map on the SDF-1.
You know, it almost felt like there was an issue missing between issue 3 and 4 here, just because it feels like the story of attaching a couple of aircraft carriers accidentally stuck in the middle of all this to the SDF-1 could have been its own issue as to the complexity of it all.
Oh, one of them was an aircraft carrier, but yeah. I think the show itself kind of glossed over that quickly, but it actually didn't mention it. But
well, I mean, there's even some glossed over flashbacks in these issues about Roy Fokker, one of the first people to help discover the SDF-1 or the wreckage of whatever it was beforehand, and he's running around in there evidently with Lisa Hayes' father, Captain Admiral Hayes, but there's no real explanation as to what they find or what they're looking for.
Admittedly, that's new. That's not been a thing that was ever explored in the actual show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some of the things that they show is getting some really interesting implications.
Well, yeah, it almost appears that even though the SDF-1 is a new ship during this time frame, they wander up to the bridge that not only is it built for human size and specifications, but it almost looked like they found the bridge crew of the SDF-1 dead, as if they'd been dead for a while.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
It goes back to one of the circular logics that the novelization went through.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the complications they find out is that the full generators were unfortunately a central part of the electrical systems of the ship, and now that it's gone, they're having trouble aligning the main gun to fire it. Which is something they overcome while they're under a subsequent attack by transforming the ship into a new configuration, which had its own complication because while the ship may be modular, it was never exactly designed for transformation. And the unfortunate thing about cities is they're never designed for transformation.
No.
So when you have one within the ship and it suddenly starts shifting around in different directions, nothing responds well.
Yeah, go figure.
Well, I mean, a lot of this is a clutched-together story. That's one of the few things they did maintain from the original series, is that everything happening, nothing is designed to work the way it has, but somehow they need it to, otherwise none of them are going to survive. And while they do manage to transform the ship into a configuration to fire the gun, it came with an unintentional side effect of killing Captain Global.
That was new, because the man lived to the end of the first saga.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one way that the storytelling has already taken a hard veer. As well as Rick Hunter developing some kind of new eye problem.
Yes.
That is something that also never happened in the series.
I mean, they're also missing some characters. There are some fan favorites, but...
Thus far. But at this early point in the series, there are several fan favorites who are not introduced as of yet.
Ben Dixon?
Yes. This is before him. Man, when Lisa Hayes is trying to order the Daedalus maneuver here, the face looks like something really vicious is happening in her abdomen.
Yeah.
There's some gastrointestinal distress happening there. Man, the artist really needs... They needed a different art style. It didn't have to be anime necessarily, but this photorealism just was not working for the majority of the series. Which is kind of weird, that a lot of the alternative covers in this series look better than the interiors of the book.
Which almost have nothing to do with what's happening in the issue, so...
Which is terribly sad. But the 5th issue is when things really start to take a different turn. I mean, Lisa Hayes is now the captain of the SDF-1, which she was never in the original version of the series. Rick Hunter is still having eye trouble that's been undiagnosed, but somebody says that his eyes appear to be evolving. By the minute, more or less.
And what the heck is up with that?
That's new.
Again, that's new territory. We are as much in the dark as you are.
Well, another new thing happening is that the SDF-1 goes to Mars, just like it did in the original series, for a potential resupply, as well as hopefully find somebody to help them.
Mm-hmm.
But in the original series, Mars base was preemptively attacked by the alien forces known as the Zentradi, the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
And then they
Which
laid
they failed to name thus far.
Right, and they laid a trap for the SDF-1 in case they needed to. However, in the comics, it's made clear that the Mars base, something else happened there, because even the Zentradi are not aware as to why this base has been abandoned. Something new has occurred in this story. They still set the trap just like they did in the original cartoon, but the reason why this base is empty is completely unknown to them. Although I will say, finally, by the 5th issue, Lin Minmay seems to be becoming a little more emotionally balanced. I don't know if they found her some medication or something. She's not being as harsh as she used to be. And Lisa is looking for her ex-fiancé, Carl Reiber. That sounds like a fiber substitute. Anyway, things get kind of more complicated because from the logs that Carl left behind in Mars base, it sounds like he found a conspiracy. He's not very clear as to what they're doing on Mars base, but it's something he's ethically opposed to, and he's always been a conscientious objector in the different versions of this story. He doesn't like the military.
I don't really remember much about the character other than he did exist at one point to be
he did exist.
Emotional crutch for Lisa.
Well, in the original cartoon, he didn't survive Mars base. He died in the initial attack that emptied Mars base. But now something else has happened. So I really don't know what's going on here. I don't know if Carl's actually going to be a functional character in these comics for the first time.
And it's kind of interesting to see how things play out now that we got all these changes going on.
Yeah, and I flipped ahead because I got curious after this volume. I wanted to see how much further the changes went. Let me start by saying this volume, if you're a fan of the original cartoons, it may be a bit hard for a reader to get through. One, because there are some changes, and as we've discussed, fanboys despise change. Two, the art is nowhere near anime, so if you're anime-centric, this is not necessarily for you.
Yeah, this art is just very harsh in general to me.
Yeah. But if you have some... as a reader, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I could. The really unfortunate part is it seemed like the major changes possible in the story didn't happen until towards the end of the first volume. It's like just when we stopped seemed to be when things were really taking a shift into unknown territory. So, I can't say it's good, but there is potential here for the story to be good. What'd you guys think of this?
Meh. Not my cup of tea. I had a hard time really caring about anything going on.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of disconnect.
Okay.
I can understand that. I mean, I know who these characters are and what journey they're supposed to go through, and I was like, why do I care about these characters? None of them seem as fun or lively as they were.
See, and you were already a fan of the series. I mean, I knew of it, but I don't know. It's just.
I can't imagine many people enjoying this. I mean, it's just very harsh and. Ugh.
I think. What?
I was going to say the art doesn't really help it at all.
Okay, well, I think it wasn't until later when things came alive. I think an editor saw what they were doing and decided to make some changes. Because things really take a hard turn late in this series. I will tell you that Max, Miria, and Ben become parts of the story.
Okay.
While Max becomes involved with Miria, it's not the friendly, antagonistic relationship that developed in the cartoon. They still met each other. They had kids, multiple, but they never really got married, and it never really worked.
I noticed that the 5th issue added an additional person to the editorials.
An additional... Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
Let me lay this out for you.
Mm-hmm.
When the SDF-1 eventually returns to Earth, as you know, Earth is kind of raised by the Zentradi at this point.
Oh yeah, they glass the surface.
Right. One of the things they discover is that underneath the original resting place of the SDF-1, there was a strange pod that had a person in it. A person that claimed to come from the future. As a matter of fact, they were wearing an REF uniform. You know, the Robotech Expeditionary Force, the ones that were supposed to go head off the Invid, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The person that popped out of this pod was a young woman. named Dana Sterling.
Mm-hmm.
So she was introduced way earlier. As a matter of fact, she is from their own future who has come back to affect something. And the effects become far-reaching because I want you to picture this, Jesse. The Invid from the third generation of Robotech suddenly was introduced in the first generation.
So there's kind of skipping over the Southern Cross saga.
Well, not just skipping it, they're completely changing the story. After the end of the original comic books, there's a new series called Robotech Remix, where the SDF-1 is still in existence. Lisa Hayes is now the Admiral. Rick Hunter is the Rear Admiral, but he's gone on walkabout. Nobody can find him. And the head of their forces is not Roy Fokker, who retired. Not died, retired. It's Dana Sterling in a red Veritech under the call sign Angel 1. And she's also having to deal with babysitting her step-nephew, Bowie Grant, who's like 10 at this point.
But really?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of characters survived in interesting places. Claudia survived, Roy Fokker survived. The bridge crew, Lisa, Sammy, Vanessa, and Kim survived.
All right.
And there's a host of new characters being introduced into the story. Everything has changed.
Did Lisa and Rick become a thing, or are they just in a working relationship?
They became a thing, but things are somewhat antagonistic because the two are still feeling each other out. They have very different ways of going about things. One of the more frustrating aspects of Robotech, and I'm saying this for Joanna and anyone else listening, was that it had a very strong military and anti-military message running throughout the series. It really seemed to deal with the idea of the military as a necessary defensive tool, yet at the same time it introduced a group of characters who despised the military, either for accidents, inept actions, or just plain existing. And that feeling...
Like people.
Yeah, and that feeling is not running through the series, but at the same time, you still feel the basis of those weird ideas running through it. Whoever wrote Robotech originally, I don't think had a full concept as to what they wanted from it, because they wanted everything, yet they justified nothing. So I think this comic goes a certain way in trying to realign the stars of the series and make it into something new. Does it go far enough in the first 5 issues? Probably not. Does it go far enough in subsequent issues? I get the broad strokes of what they're doing, but I'd have to sit down and read it to be able to tell you. It's enough to make me curious to actually finish the run of 20-some-odd comics. However, would I recommend it to someone? No, probably not. And I'm not saying that to be harsh, it just didn't feel like whoever started this story started on the best of footing.
Yeah. Again, for me, it's just, I feel like it was a rush work. I understand what the hell is going on only because I remember watching the old cartoons and back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I managed to follow everything, but it's just like without that, I can't imagine anyone following this.
Yeah, Robotech is a story that has full of modern storytelling potential, but it's kind of difficult to make giant robots fighting giants sound appealing. And I say that as a giant robot fan, so go figure. But I think that's... What?
I think this war stories in general is out of favor in this day and age.
I wouldn't say that necessarily, but Robotech is a pacifist story hiding as a war story, I think is the problem. A lot of their characters come up with reasons not to fight, yet they're always supporting the military. It's very strange.
This podcast is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
But that's about the best I can describe it. We've been on for a while, though, and I don't want to bore everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe the last issue of the origin of the Constructicons in Transformers Generations comes out this week. So I will double check. If that's what's happening, then that is what we'll be reading. If not, I still have the first volume of Ignited, and I'm kind of curious to sit down and read that with you guys and find out how that feels.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So we do have a plan. We're still in independent comics. It's just a matter of which one. We will find out. Either Transformers Generations or Ignited. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I look forward to checking out the next story with you. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
The Cosmic Library is now closed.